Thank you so much for joining us on the program. Now, let's begin with the latest. Bandits have abducted at least 87 people in the Kajuru Station community within Kajuru local government area of Kaduna State. Yes, that's the same local government that was just invaded not quite long, where we had some school children kidnapped. Now, the bandits were said to have looted some shops and houses located in that community. The attack was reported to have occurred on Sunday night, just a day after 14 people were kidnapped by bandits at Dogo Noma community, also within Kajuru local government. Now, in recent times, Kajuru and Chikun local government areas and Kaduna Central Senatorial District have come under heavy attacks, including the abduction of 287 students at Kuriga community in Chikun. Well, following an upsurge in the kidnap cases, the Chief of Defense Staff General Christopher Musa arrived at the state government house on Monday to meet with Governor Obasani. The state is actually facing this insecurity crisis over time, and while speaking during the meeting, which also had representatives of the Kuriga community in attendance, General Musa assured that the abducted students and those recently kidnapped by bandits along Kajuru will soon be rescued. Meanwhile, the defense headquarters has debunked claims that the military had embarked on reprisal attacks, including the burning of houses in Okwama community in Delta State. The defense headquarters has in the meantime released the names of the soldiers killed during that attack, which has got a lot of Nigerians very angry that these promising soldiers and officers were killed just when they were trying to make the nation safer. Well, I'm glad to be joined in the studio by experts in the fields of security and counterterrorism. I have Professor Alao, who's a visiting fellow and senior lecturer at the Nigerian Defense Academy, joining us right here. He's also a cybersecurity and technology management expert. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
And also right here on set with me is David Otto, who's an international defense and security analyst. He's a specialist and then, of course, a certified master anti-terrorism specialist too. Thank you so much for joining us. So, Prof, let's start with you. Talk to us about these challenges that we're having now. I mean, the Defense Headquarters has just released these latest pictures with the names of those who were killed. We had a commanding officer, that's a lieutenant colonel, and then, of course, there were, I think, 2 majors, and then, of course, a captain and 12 other soldiers. The nation is mourning at this moment alongside their families because the soldiers were killed while trying to defend the nation's integrity. Talk to us about how it's such a painful thing for us to lose this, not at war, but I mean during peace times.
Our heart goes to the family and the colleagues and the whole nation on these gallant, brave men and women, men that lost their life in act of duty to our Commonwealth, Nigeria. They call them youth, community youth or whatever one might call them. These are more than even terrorists. If there's another word can be used to describe them, this heinous crime committed or perpetrated by this lot, they have to face the wrath of the law. And well, it wasn't too long ago, it was almost like a week ago, we said on this very same program that, look, a lot needs to be done. It's about time we all need to put our differences aside and look, we have no other country we can call our own than Nigeria. And if the people that are there to keep our life and property secured are also unsafe by those so-called under the pretext of youth, no matter what their grievances, I believe this is preposterous. This is beyond what can one imagine. Something has to be done. But again, we've heard from the Defense Headquarters, everything possible shall be done under the law.
All right, and David Otto, I'll bring you in here. Do soldiers actually have rights too? I mean, whenever it's civilians, we complain of human rights, their right to life being deprived. But here we have soldiers fighting to keep our nation safe, being caught short in their prime.
I share the same sentiments with my co-panelist here. This is a very devastating situation. We still continue to mourn, extending heartfelt condolence to the bereaved families. The manner in which these soldiers were massacred is beyond comprehension. That should never happen to anyone that should never happen to a soldier. Everyone has a right, be it a service personnel or a citizen. We expressed the same heartfelt sympathy when there was a mistake by the military in throwing some bombs in areas that killed civilians. We expressed the same. This should not happen. What has happened to these soldiers should never have happened. They have their rights. The biggest loss is not just for the families, but it is a loss for the continent. It is a loss for Nigeria, because when you train soldiers of this very high caliber, the amount of time and resources that it takes for you to bring up this level of soldiers is just enormous. So we're not just talking about the loss of life of individuals, but we are talking about how much this has cost.
Yeah, it's a greater loss to the Nigerian state itself.
To the Nigerian state itself and to the Nigerian population. Nigeria is under attack by its own citizens.
That's right.
Now the question is, what kind of mechanisms are going to be put in place to carry out investigations? Let us not conclude that the community is responsible, because it could be a decoy. Mm-hmm. It could be people from outside the community who want to see that particular community being demolished, knowing fully well the history of what has happened in previous incidents, and they've launched these attacks. But we are not saying that it is not the community, but what we're saying is let the investigation be thorough. There is no need for a knee-jerk reaction. We cannot condone further killings, be it as a result of retaliation. I think what needs to be done is that the entire country, the military, the commander-in-chief, we have to revitalize, we have to re-strategize and review the force deployment strategy that the military currently uses.
All right. So, and Prof, we've seen some sort of knee-jerk reaction from the political authorities. I mean, President Tinubu's statement, actually, some people are interpreting it as, as if it's been said out of fear of the military. I mean, yes, things happen like this, but it looked like a license for the military to just go berserk and retaliate on behalf of their colleagues. What do you make of that statement by the president? And of course, some lawmakers are also backing the president.
I would like to say, you can even see from my own tone, I'm enraged. And let's put this sentiment and political trying to play some cards, let's put it aside. Call them youth. I mean, they say without fire there can be smoke, and without smoke there can be fire. We need to know, they need to get to the science of the situation. I don't think it was just out of a blue. This was well planned. I mean, and again, you can see the gruesome death this gallant military men, personnel faces. It's just unheard of.
Very brutal.
Something
actually.
needs to be done.
Yeah, I mean, so, but well, I mean, we are a professional army because, I mean, we fight within the context of international laws and treaties and all of that. And of course, the talks is that the military has to still remain professional, even in the face of being...
that's correct.
Yeah, so now that's where I want you to come in, David Otto. How do we handle this? I mean, it's our own military. We're very proud of it, irrespective of what some citizens have done to them. How do they handle this professionally, such a way that it doesn't look like they are just going out there on a retaliatory course?
Well, I think, the reports of, houses being raised, already been distributed on social media is not something that, one should allude directly to a professional military. Despite the horrendous nature of this, massacre, I call it, I think the military must exercise the highest level of restraint. The job of the senior members of the military, the chiefs of staff, the commander-in-chief, is to ensure that a thorough investigation, intelligence-led, is carried out, and the actual perpetrators, and I use the word actual deliberately, the actual perpetrators are hunted down. The Nigerian military, the intelligence services, the police, they do have the capacity to track and trace down each and every one of these individuals. Now, there could be a small percentage of collateral damage, but that shouldn't exceed the national limit. This is not something which the military should wipe down an entire community as we've seen in the past, in the case of Udi, for example. This is a case where I believe yes, this is a case where I believe that the military should learn a massive lesson in terms of its force deployment. I did mention that this was a well-planned massacre. The issue, and where I think the military would have to scratch its head, is how did this happen? Why was there no response? What happened to the community? Should the military
actually happen 3 days?
And,
it was after 3 days.
And should the military be responsible in a democratic setting to respond to peace, to issues that are connected to communal clashes? No, it should be the job of other law enforcement officers, the police. Now, we are not saying that the police should have been killed instead of the military. What we're saying is that this was supposed to be a law enforcement from the police. The police is embedded within the community. If it were the police, they would have had the required number of intelligence to understand that perhaps this peacekeeping mission was a mission of no return to the military. So effectively, we have to review the way that we use the military in Nigeria.
Very interesting position there. And Prof, just before we move on to, of course, all the kidnappings in the north and all of that, why did it take the military like 3 days to actually announce to Nigerians that this had happened? Because people are beginning to ask questions. And could it be that the military actually were also doing their own investigation? There are talks here and there that it could also be that it was a gang fight between certain people who control waterways and all of that. And maybe it could have been that some of those soldiers were deployed illegally and all of that. So why did it take us 3 days to actually know that our own soldiers were killed by, people call them hoodlums, mercenaries and all of that?
I believe in their wisdom, the wisdom of Nigerian army or the military. They don't want a sensational kind of, as I said, you can even imagine from the comment we hear in, oh, Mr. President and so on and so forth. This is not a time to play political card. It's better to really keep focus on what, this is a colossal loss on the entirety of, security apparatus of Nigeria. Again, whoever they are, I mean, they are waging war against 200+ million people.
Yeah.
This is what it's not, it's even beyond just military. Yeah. So that's the kind of lens we should be using to look at the issue.
All right, yeah, we'll continue to look at it from that way, because, these were people's husbands, fathers and all of that, and then being just cut short. Even the Nigerian state owes them an explanation for their death, actually. Right. But now let's talk about people who have been kidnapped. We saw the Chief of Defense Staff today, earlier in Kaduna. We're beginning to lose the numbers. So the number of those who were kidnapped just last night, we had another 87 people being picked. And we keep wondering, what's going on? Aren't we using technology? The issues of body heat, when you have a huge mass of people in a particular place, can't we pick up the signals? What's going on?
That's a good question. We mentioned this maybe vaguely. Wasn't even it's less than a week ago, am I right?
Yes,
less than a week ago. We said there's no way, even if it's just a guinea fowl being carried, 280 in numbers. Think about the logistics for a moment. This thing is well planned, and again, a lot needs to be done, and it's not over until it's over. We can't just quickly paintbrush it and push it aside and say, well, these are last remote. Every life and property of Nigeria, as a citizen of this beautiful country, is sacrosanct. Is as important as the first man, Mr. President. So I believe it's about time. It's not about trying to play political card or so, or trying to say who does what, who fail in their responsibility. As I usually like to say, it's a responsibility of every citizen of Nigeria that, look, you see something, say something, and try to alert. It's gone are the days whereby you can say, well, in as much it's not my community, I'm less concerned. You mentioned technology. Technology, we are not talking about technology to technology. Man still needs to handle this part of tools. And again, it might take some time. It depends on what they have there. one thing is for you to have the technologies, another thing is how to apply that technology to put it in place. So I believe a lot needs to be done. You said something in your report that the Association of Technologists in Nigeria are go on strike. I mean, we have to be sensitive to the reality on the ground. This is not the right time to go on strike. For heaven's sake, we need to be a bit sensitive to the reality.
I'll join hands together. And Otto, I mean, how could it be that security operatives actually been beaten by some of these ragtag, bandits and all of that? I mean, just every now and then, and not just kidnapping people, but also looting foodstuff and all of that. I mean, it takes a longer period before they get into the ungoverned spaces, forests and all of that. How come it's difficult for us to get a reaction from the security operatives to be able to tackle them ahead of time, within that specific time of operation?
I think it lies down to, it comes down to one key element. The country has not, and when I talk about the country, I mean the security agencies. They've not properly mapped out what you call their vulnerability matrix. They've also not been able to determine their threat matrix within the country. So effectively what that means is, the security agencies have undermined or overlooked or, giving allowance for non-state actors to have the monopoly or maybe share the monopoly for the use of force and also for the monopoly for arresting individuals, in this case kidnapping. This has to be the sole responsibility of the government to ensure that it maintains that monopoly. But we haven't been able to do that for two simple reasons. The country lacks a national threat matrix, and it also lacks a vulnerability assessment. And I'm talking about the 36 states, especially the states where these things are happening. So I'm just talking about from a strategic point of view, because what we're seeing on ground demonstrates that the security forces do not actually know when these threats will happen, and they do not actually know the gravity of these threats as well. So they find themselves in always a position where, as the Chief of Defense Staff said, we would pursue them. This is what you call a reactive strategy. So people have been taken in 200 and something, which is unheard of. It's almost like an entire village has been stolen away from the state.
Just imagine what it would be like
so
for everybody living in a particular street to
be kidnapped by a non-state actor, and they get away with it. So again, we made some submissions, which was very clear. There are areas which the government, and when I speak about the government, the security agencies have to adopt, which of course, cannot clearly be discussed in all open circumstances. But there are areas where gaps need to be filled. At this point in time, the government has lost the monopoly to use force, because if you can have that number of children being kidnapped, a state is reliant on the children and its security forces, and you have security forces being killed and massacred, just like unarmed citizens, then of course, it therefore clearly shows that, there is a huge gap in terms of the state understanding what are its threats, the capacity of its threats, and not knowing where its vulnerabilities are. And that's why the military forces are exposed.
And Prof, SBM Consultancy, which is actually SBM Intelligence, actually, which is actually a security consulting firm, says in one of its reports that close to about 5,000 people, 4,777 people to be specific, have been kidnapped since May last year that President Tinubu came to power. And we keep wondering, this happened under Jonathan, under President Buhari, and then we are here again under President Tinubu. What exactly is going on? Is it that we aren't learning, or it's just that we've left villagers to their fate? It's only when it happens to the cities that we improve on our intelligence gathering because of maybe all the media concentration within the cities, and then villagers are left to their fate.
As I said before, and also we mentioned on this program, I guess, a few days back, that look, we don't need to sensationalize the issue we're having in the country. Well, based on that very report from that security consultancy, I believe one thing that hasn't been done we might, just like this one going on now, people do opportunistic, I mean, kind of like having a forum, conference, and so on. What happened next? I mean, where are the forensics report of the crime scene, the aftermath, and so on? We are here, as my colleague says, not everything can be said online, but I believe you can't be deploying the same tools and expecting to get a different result. It's about time to change the gear to something else. They haven't really, I believe it's about time they need to try a different approach. I don't think the solution is right there, but it's just that we are not looking at where we're supposed to be looking or searching for the answer.
And I wonder where the Office of the National Security Advisor is within this. I mean, we've seen trainings and counter trainings over time, meetings between the president and the service chiefs and then the NSC, and all of this happens, and looks like there's no coordination within the security
exactly.
agencies.
We mentioned this on the last segment, that look, we need, this is a Nigerian problem, this is an African problem, we need African solution. We don't need to look outwardly, we need to look inwardly. I mean, even before we have so-called technology, there's a way and manner we gather intelligence. These people doesn't come from a different planet. They come from planet Nigeria, if not that from the very same axis, Kaduna, other than Kaduna. So it's still within. As we are talking, they are watching. They're also watching. These people are someone said they are ragtag. Sorry, they are not ragtag set of people. They are well trained.
Whenever they are arrested, I mean, you see how they look. Actually, sometimes they look like they are disorganized.
They are intelligent. They gather. Sorry to say, I might say they might even have better intelligence than the people after them. So these are the things we really need to take seriously. We can't just say, oh, they are ragtag, they are inexperienced or well trained. They are well trained.
All right, so what do you make of the SBM intelligence finding? 4,707 people kidnapped since May last year. And it looks like almost every time we have a new president, I mean, these guys go out there daring the president. How should President Tinubu be defined by the security situation and then attempts to solve the security situation within his presidency?
Well, I think, when you look at these reports, they're indicative of one thing, that the president needs to, as the commander-in-chief, he needs to recalibrate his national security. Even if it were one individual, it is still under the responsibility of the commander-in-chief to keep each and every Nigerian safe. So it's not really about the numbers, but the numbers makes it worse, and it does indicate that no lessons are being learned. There are no preventive measures to stop these kidnappings from happening. There are no measures to stop mass kidnapping. So not just kidnapping, but mass kidnappings, which is unheard of in any country of this nature. To kidnap 200 and something.
Yeah, I mean, shepherding them into the forest.
And disappear with them in thin air.
It just sounds,
yes, it sounds unreal.
When you're saying,
yes.
But I mean, in reality, I mean, this should be a huge logistics challenge.
And the question is, who has been held accountable publicly? Do we have any authorities resigning as a result of that for failure of not meeting up to the standards of expectations given to them by the president? Now, we're not just talking about people that have been kidnapped. We're talking about people that have been killed as well. And here we are talking about soldiers who are trained by the Nigerian government to protect the territorial integrity being killed. It means that the nation is under attack. The state is under attack. The people are under attack. Nobody is safe. So the simple solution is that there needs to be a review. Perhaps the government may want to establish a national kidnapping something, whatever they want to call it. The government,
a database and all of that?
A national kidnapping unit.
Okay.
That will be anti-kidnapping unit.
I thought there was something like that with the Civil Defense Corps and all of that.
Well, it doesn't seem as if it's working, is it? Because if this number of people are still being mixed away, it therefore means that it's just in the name, if it does exist. But
will you recommend something like a National Guard, a sort of pseudo-military force, not a police?
I think whatever name is you want to allude to it. I think the most important thing is to have a specialized unit that will deal with national anti-kidnapping, which means the focus of that is to prevent. mass kidnappings and to prevent kidnappings of individuals. That has to be set up.
Right.
Of course, the Nigerian government has what they call the early warning signal, early warning unit, which is part of the ECOWAS, early warning signs. But that could also be an area where you can mine data from. So I think these are very critical areas where the commander-in-chief and the president must be able to look at. But at this point in time, the country seems to be in trouble, in terms of preserving its territorial integrity.
Well, as we try to round off this conversation, we've seen that the security architecture in the country actually needs a reboot in one way or the other.
That's right.
And when someone like former President, military head of state, Ibrahim Babangida, was faced with similar situation, he tried to bring forth this National Guard, something that's an in-between between the military and the police and all of that, to tackle domestic security problem. Because here we could see, a communal crisis where soldiers who are trained to be doing external, fighting, got engaged in it, and here we are mourning them. What do we do to actually recalibrate our security architecture to fit into maybe some of the recommendations he had made?
As I mentioned before, we can't keep doing the same. We can't keep applying the same approach and expect a different, new result. We need to change the way we're doing things. We need to recalibrate. That's not all. Again, let me use the word once again, when you call them ragtag, these people doesn't just appear from nowhere. Who are their financier? We need to track to the minute how this thing come into being. These are the things we should be looking at. Someone is sitting somewhere and say, I got them. We need to know all this. All this need to be known. These are intelligent, both through technology and also as well human intelligence. I believe they need to reach out to some capable, entities within the Commonwealth Nigeria. I believe it's a Nigerian problem, and I believe we can provide Nigerian solution, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And then the issues of actually prosecuting people who engage in this crime against the state. Because when you kill a soldier, you have actually attacked the state. How do we ensure that, because there are reports that some of them have been arrested, some of these youths, for example, in the Delta State, how do we ensure that when you kill a soldier, you're actually made to face the law properly and we don't get politics getting in, like some people are being given amnesty with the Boko Haram issues and all of that?
Yeah, I think, it's very clear. The criminal justice system of every country should have independence of the legislature, the judiciary, and the executive. And if you want to ensure that perpetrators, go through the arms of the law, then of course you have to empower the judiciary to be independent. Not to be influenced by either the executive or any other branch of government. And this is where it's very crucial. It is one thing to arrest an individual and as a military or as a police officer, you hand them to the courts and then they are freed by the courts for some political affiliation. So there you have to ensure or legal gymnastics. So I think it's important that if we want to call this country a democratic country, then we have to respect the independence of those various arms of government. But above all, I think one of the most proactive measures that the government can take in these circumstances is to call an emergency meeting with all the chiefs and obas or sultans of each and every state. Give them the power to begin to take responsibility for their local government. Because as we speak, the Constitution has clipped most of the wings of these local authorities. They cannot take the necessary measures. So we need to go back to basics.
All right. And
use that as, a starting point to ensure that we can restart a new era of kidnapping or counterinsurgency. But that's just one approach, which could be very useful.
All right. That's a better place to actually leave it. David Otto is an international defense and security specialist. He's a certified master anti-terrorism specialist. We must thank you so much for joining us to help us understand these issues. And then, of course, Professor Alao is a visiting fellow and senior lecturer at the Nigerian Defense Academy. He's also a cybersecurity and technology management expert. We must thank you so much for immense wealth of knowledge. And then, of course, to our Nigerian soldiers, you're always there defending us. We believe that you're always there for us, and it's a time to mourn along with you as the nation stands behind you during these sad times where we've seen not just a commanding officer, but of course other officers and soldiers being killed in such a very brutal situation. Our hearts are with the families of these soldiers, and we'll continue to do our best as a country to protect all of you, and our hearts go out to your families, even as we mourn with the Nigerian military.